Welcome to Capital Gains, Yahoo Finance's unique look at how US government policy affects your bottom line. I'm your host, Rochelle Akufo. Of course, we're less than a month away from Inauguration Day for President-elect Trump, and he's charging full speed ahead with his picks and his policies for the White House. He actually gave his first remarks since his Election Day victory. So we were trying to get into some of the policy and break down some of the breadcrumbs we could find there. And obviously a lot of headlines for billionaires as well in his administration as well. And of course, later on, we're going to be joined by London School of Business Assistant Professor of Economics, Yoseba Martinez, to describe all things Trump, tariffs, and taxes, our three favorite things. And of course, my two favorite people, Ben Worschel and Rick Newman, my co-stars here, want to bring you in. So Ben, what have you been watching this week?
Yeah, so good to be with you guys. So to kick us off today, I sort of thought I could look at three signals we got this week about Trump 2.0. What three things we're going to get a lot of. The first is a lot of executive action. You mentioned Trump's press conference this week. He talked for over an hour on a variety of things and his sort of plan for full prosperity, as he called it, for the U.S. And what he said, he underlined, is we're going to do a lot of executive orders and sign a lot of things on day one, which he's talked about a little bit in the past, but it's sort of underlined that fact. And a lot of it is going to be on energy. So that's a sector I'll definitely watch at the very beginning of what Trump wants to make a splash on, in addition to other issues like immigration. Second signal is a lot of monkey wrenches. As we're taping this, where there's a spending fight going on, and what Trump has shown is, which was true in Trump 1.0, but it's amplified this time because we've also got another unpredictable figure in Elon Musk. Is they're not shy about just sort of blowing things up if they need to. But by the time people are hearing this, there may be some resolution to the spending fight. But Trump is willing to sort of jump in and say, we should deal with the debt limit. No one was talking about the debt limit a few days back, and suddenly now it's at the top of the agenda in a kind of unpredictable way. So that's another thing, is that Trump, with Elon Musk there, sort of making it even more so, is really willing to sort of gum up the works if he thinks it's going to benefit him. And then the third, I've already mentioned Elon Musk, is a lot of billionaires. Elon Musk has shown pretty incredible power this week, and all in the weeks leading up in sort of his closest to Trump. So he's the sort of the central billionaire, but Trump has picked a cabinet that's just stocked with billionaires up and down. It's one of the richest cabinets in history. And you also have a parade of billionaires coming to Mar-a-Lago. The visitor this week was Jeff Bezos. Elon Musk, of course, was there. He called it a great conversation. So there's all these billionaires kind of working for Trump and trying to work with Trump. So that's another big thing you're going to see a lot of in the coming weeks.
Hey, worth reminding everybody, Joe Biden is still the president. And you know, what's happening on Capitol Hill is the next administration, which hasn't even taken office yet, is calling the shots. And I think it's hard to overstate how extraordinary it is that it's not even Donald Trump exactly who's calling the shots. It's Elon Musk. Elon Musk got this thing started by blowing up the spending bill with a tweet storm that went on for hours. And I think this is unprecedented. And then Trump got behind Musk, and Congress did what it wanted. So they're going to have to get this resolved. But I mean, let's say this is a template for how this administration is going to function. I have a basic question: who's in charge here? Donald Trump or Elon Musk? Is this going to be a co-presidency? Is this going to work out? I mean, I can see this going one of two different ways. I kind of feel like Trump, the second time around, might delegate a lot more than he did the first time around, and then just go play golf. I mean, he's older. He has a clearer sense of the people he wants in place who are going to do what he wants instead of trying to block what he wants to do. So he seems to be setting it up that way. So maybe he will be quite happy to delegate to Elon Musk. Or you could have two gigantic egos that can't fit inside the same city. Washington, D.C. is not that big anyway. So maybe the bromance is gonna blow up when these two get competitive. But I follow all these political analysts who try to tell you in detail what's going on inside the Beltway every week and every day, and many of them are saying we've never seen anything like an external person who's not even an elected official, not in the government in any way, determining what Congress does.
And that does bring into question the dynamics, especially when we talk about DOGE and the government efficiency. And it was interesting because Kalshi this week came out with their betting odds
site
of DOGE actually being able to cut that $2 trillion from the federal budget. 8% were the odds they give of DOGE being able to cut $2 trillion. 8%. Not good odds, not good odds. Yet here is, Musk wielding all this power, although not in an official government department, but clearly having the ear of Congress, and more importantly, the ear of President-elect Trump. Then
8% is realistic. So the betting market, in my view, is getting that right. But if you're a CEO who wants to have influence on this administration, the question you're asking yourself is not, will DOGE be able to reach this target that it seems to have set for itself, which is $2 trillion in spending cuts? And we don't even know, is that by the way, when Musk and Ramaswamy wrote their op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, they said $500 billion per year. There have been questions like $2 trillion all at once or $2 trillion a year. I mean, $2 trillion a year is impossible, but their target was $500 billion. But at any rate, they're probably not going to get that. But if you're a CEO, you're saying to yourself, wow, this seems like an unprecedented effort to remake the federal government. I want a seat at the table. And I think that is a big reason why we're seeing so many CEOs buddying up with Trump. I use the phrase sucking up to Trump in a story we ran recently. I think they perceive, and perhaps correctly, an unprecedented opportunity to influence the way their companies get regulated. And a lot of this could happen beneath the radar in ways that people don't even see. I mean, just about every big company in America is regulated by the federal government at some level. And if an incoming administration signals to you, hey, we're gonna remake the agency that regulates you, would you like to have some input on that? I mean, every single CEO would say, absolutely, I'd like to be involved in that. So some really interesting and perhaps crazy things are coming.
Yeah. The one element I would add too is I definitely think 8% for $2 trillion, which Musk has said is the annual budget, $2 trillion out of the annual budget. 8% is high to me. That's more than the entire discretionary budget of the U.S. To cut entirely. So it's
more than double. It's more than double the discretionary budget of the U.S.
Something like that, yeah. But what I would argue that Musk has sort of already won in a sense by integrating himself, as you're talking about, in all these different levers of power. I'm looking this week at Capitol Hill and DOGE, and it's amazing. They're building these caucuses that are sort of entirely to kind of work with DOGE and provide a complement to there. There's multiple versions in the House. The White House is going to have an element of that too, and then obviously Musk operation himself and his influences, which is everywhere. And we saw it in the shutdown stuff that he can make legislation happen or not happen. He can make regulation cuts happen. He can do that. He's sort of wired in to the entire firmament of Washington in a way that, as we're talking about, makes him incredibly powerful.
So there's a big risk for the DOGE and for everybody who's behind it. And I think one of the most obvious ones is that the DOGE does not have the mandate that Elon Musk says it does. I mean, he tweeted, who cares if the federal government shuts down for 33 days? Shut it all down until Trump takes office on January 20th. Guess what? A lot of people do care, and a lot of people would be affected by that. And shutting down the government, I mean, you wonder if Elon Musk has ever, looked into like recent political history. This has always been a bad move for Republicans. They always lose politically when they shut down the government. Americans don't approve of that. Bad things happen, and voters blame Republicans. So if Trump and Musk and whoever's part of this cabal, if they're willing to blow their political capital right away, then sure, shut down the government. It's going to be way less popular than you think it is. And that's not what voters said they wanted in 2024. They said they wanted somebody to get control of immigration, and they want lower prices. And they were kind of agnostic about whether you should blow up the government or not.
But it was interesting because in the NBC interview, Trump, it was a phone interview, but Trump was basically saying, look, if there is going to be a shutdown, let it be on the Democrats' watch. Let it be while, it's the last dregs of the Biden administration, so that they can essentially start fresh. How does that make any kind of sense? Does that make sense in terms of a new administration coming in while we're in the middle of a government shutdown, Ben?
I think there's that it makes a little less political sense for sure. I mean, the one element too is I think voters, they think of, like, as to Rick's earlier point, they think of Trump as the president right now, essentially. So a shutdown is just a kind of reminder of the Trump chaos in 1.0 and going in there. And another more specific one to highlight is it's not good for Speaker Mike Johnson, who's supposed to be Trump's main ally, but has had probably one of the roughest weeks of anyone, because he negotiated this deal and then watched his erstwhile allies blow it up entirely, and he kind of has no way forward at the moment in terms of how to do that. So I think politically it's tricky, and it's sort of a reason to sort of think that they'll figure out a way to get out of a shutdown and not sort of cause a bunch of chaos right now and save that for after January 20th.
I mean, Republicans own all of this at this point. I mean, they do control the House right now, so they can block whatever they want if Mike Johnson get enough Republicans, with that very thin margin to do it. I would like to highlight what I think is one actually good idea here. I mean, Trump has. And I don't really know the origin. I'm not sure why he thinks this, but Trump has said, let's just get rid of the debt ceiling. I think that's a great idea. I think the debt ceiling is just a complete joke. It's supposed to prevent the U.S. government from borrowing more than some preset amount of money. It has never worked, as everybody knows. The Congress just keeps raising the debt limit instead of dealing with the debt. And then we have all these stupid showdowns every time we almost hit the debt limit. We go through this absolutely insane, completely ridiculous drill. Is the United States going to default on its debt? I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever. I think it'd be great to get rid of the debt limit and just deal with the debt as it is. I have no idea how this is going to shake out. I mean, what we're talking about with the spending bill is just a short-term bill. I mean, Trump is going to get to write the next budget. I mean, we're talking about whether we're going to get a bill that gets us, 1 month or 3 months of spending or whatever until Trump is actually president, and then they will own all of this.
It'll be new territory, and we'll be digging more into that with our guest on the other side of this. That will be Yahoo Martinez. So stay with us on Capital Gains. Much more coming up. Welcome back to Capital Gains. Joining us now is London Business School Assistant Professor Yahoo Martinez. He's going to be breaking down something that we were touching on earlier, which is the debt ceiling, and President-elect Trump saying he wants to do away with it. But we don't yet know what that would actually mean in real terms and what that would mean for the economy. Yahoo, do we have any idea in this very busy sort of home stretch to President-elect Trump coming in, what that might actually look like?
Hi guys, great to be with you. You're all looking fresh, even though you must be having all-nighters with all this stuff going on right now in the US. I don't envy you, run up to Christmas and all that. Yeah, the debt ceiling, look, I mean, you know much more about this than I do. I think that's something that could be done at the stroke of a pen if President Trump wanted to. But as with so much of what's going on right now, I just think it's a massive distraction from what should be, in my opinion, the singular focus of the administration. One of you said in the this fascinating conversation you had something about Trump saying something like his administration is all about maximum prosperity. That's what I think that's what I think all administrations should be about. And having arguments about the debt ceiling, that's not conducive to that. What I think is, what's the point of having all these tech people in government now if what they're not doing is just focusing the administration on getting growth going, getting innovation up, getting growth going, creating true long-lasting prosperity. And I think these fights about debt ceiling, tariffs, I think they're a distraction from what should be the singular mission, which is what policies can be put in place, use this unified government, use the power that Donald Trump has to really maybe change the future of the US, put these policies in place that are going to boost innovation, are going to boost growth. Because if growth gets going, all of these things will look much better. The deficit, inflation, income distribution, the fate of the Midwest and so on, all of these things will look so much better if the US can go back to what it used to be, which is an economy that grew at, 3.5%, 4% in per capita terms per year. The US can get back to that. This administration will, of course, have been a colossal success, but also, a lot of the problems that are there now will not matter so much anymore. So really what I think they should be doing is, what policies do we need?
But I do want to ask, because obviously we haven't gotten a lot of the meat and potatoes of these policies for them to be able to sort of corral around and focus on economic growth. So where should they be looking then if we don't have concrete policies? We are still hearing a lot of we'll see, and he's still making his cabinet picks, and nothing's really concrete for them to be able to sink their teeth into at the moment.
So I think we've heard bits. We've heard, obviously, we haven't heard the specific on tariffs, and that's not something that I guess can happen magically. What we have heard a lot about is tax policy, and that's where I'm really genuinely very concerned. We know that the TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, will be made permanent. Okay, that's a big corporate tax cut with some other bits and pieces. I think that's a very bad policy. I think that making that policy permanent in its current form will be damaging for growth. The work that I do is all about how tax cuts, corporate tax cuts, are this kind of amazing way to superpower innovation and growth. And the TCJA, that's a massive corporate tax cut. So what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it is, at the same time as it did TCJA, they made some changes to how the tax code treats innovators that really make innovation in the US less attractive. And that's criminal, in my opinion, because as I say, what should be a singular focus is, what tax code can we design that's going to boost innovation? So I think the priorities of the government should be, how do we fix the TCJA, and what do we do next to get innovation going?
Well, how would you fix that corporate tax piece of the TCJA specifically? I know you've written about sort of making corporate tax cuts temporary. Is that part of the answer here, to sort of lower it down for a certain period to boost innovation and then bring it back up? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so the TCJA, it has this kind of obscure bit in it, which is to pay for some of the headline corporate tax cut. What it does is it changes the way that R&D expenditure is treated in the tax code. So, okay, trigger warning, I'm about to talk about the tax code, okay? So strap in. So
our audience can take it.
It used to be the case that, if I'm an innovator, I'm a small firm in whatever, Texas, and I'm doing some research on whatever, wind power. Every dollar that I spend on R&D, I get to just deduct from my taxes in the year that it's spent. Okay, TCJ did away with that. Now I have to capitalize my R&D expenditure and then amortize it over time. This is a policy which is unfavorable, especially for small businesses. There's actually a great paper out there by some people at Stanford. They reckon that change alone has already reduced R&D expenditure. So the first thing that needs to happen is do away with this worsening the treatment of R&D and tax code. The second thing that needs to happen is, so exactly. Thanks for the plug, Ben. Yeah, I have this paper which says exactly that these tax cuts, even though they're temporary, they have really large effects on productivity. Okay, so the corporate tax cut goes down by 1% for a few years, and total effective productivity is 1.5% higher 10 years later. Patenting is higher 10 years later. So really, corporate tax cuts look like a very effective way of boosting the economy for the long run. The thing is that they're a very blunt instrument. Okay, when I cut the corporate tax cut, sure, my innovators get more money. They do more innovation. I love that. But also, monopolists get more money. Firms that aren't contributing to the growth of the economy, they're just sitting pretty on their market power and just sucking value out of the American economy, they also get a tax cut. So what I'm really proposing, what the message of that paper is redesigning the tax code so that we give tax cuts that are very focused on innovators. And that's a tricky thing to do, because if you offered me a tax cut for being an innovator, I would say I'm an innovator, obviously, right? That's my job as a company. So what the proposal is, when there's a transaction between firms and intellectual property, let's say, Ben, you come up with an amazing idea and I buy a patent from you. When I buy that patent, I get to treat that as an expense. I can just expense it through my accounts. That reduces my taxes. That policy allowing intellectual property to be treated as purchase of intellectual property to be treated as an expense, what that would do is that would raise the market value of intellectual property. It would make innovation more valuable. And if I make innovation more valuable, then what are people going to do? They're going to focus on innovation. If I make green patents more valuable, more people will go and do green patents. If I make AI patents more valuable, more people will go and try and develop AI patents.
Guys,
so rather than cut the headline rate, what I'd like to see is more favorable treatment of intellectual property and tax code.
Yoseb, I have two questions. I'm going to try to ask them in sequence. Before the TCJA in 2017, the U.S. corporate tax rate was 35%. That was way above the average for advanced nations. Now around at 21%. It is around the average for advanced nations. Was that in itself an improvement? And then I want to take that to another question.
So yes, it is an improvement. But again, I just think it's too blunt an instrument to just cut the corporate tax rate. The U.S. has a lot of stuff it needs to pay for, and corporation tax is a reasonable way to raise money as long as we can make it less distortionary. And the way to make it less distortionary is think hard. How do I make the tax code favorable for innovators? And then frankly, if some, meat monopolist is paying 35% tax, who cares?
Yeah. Okay, so one of Trump's new ideas is to lower it further from 21% to 15% for companies that do domestic production here in the United States. Is that a good idea?
No, I don't think it's a good idea.
Why?
The U.S., especially industries that are very domestically focused, the U.S. has a big competition problem. I have some work that looks at comparing, the price of bread and meat between the EU and the US over the last few decades. And inflation in those domestically produced staples has been so much higher in the US. And that really looks like it's the result of market power. So cutting taxes on domestic producers, and especially if you then shield them from foreign competition using tariffs, that's going to increase monopoly power. Really, the focus should be on doing, really powering what the US does best, which is innovating, giving tax cuts, not for everyone, just for innovators.
So then you're saying, but how does that work with the sort of the changing labor force that comes with mass deportations that Trump is proposing?
Well, I don't know if you'll be shocked to hear that I'm not a huge enthusiast for mass deportations. I think that, the mass deportations will affect mostly parts of the labor force that are not so much involved in innovation, but are involved in these like incredibly important day-to-day things. And it's a complete fallacy that those workers that would be deported can be replaced by domestic workers. So I think, mass deportations over there would be bad for many sectors. Construction, the US is supposed to be in build mode, and we're going to get rid of maybe millions of builders. It's not a good idea. At the top, at the kind of innovator side, what needs to happen, what I passionately hope would happen, is a massive reform. Just make it easier for anyone who has a great idea and a great education to move to the US and develop it there.
Professor, we're really running a little low on time, but I wanted to get one other subject in, which is you're a professor of automation, I saw as well. And I'm curious kind of if you saw Trump's recent comments on the longshoremen, the ports, where it was basically anti-automation, was saying, I don't want automation. It's not good for people. He said, as for the companies, they've got record profits, and I'd rather these foreign companies spend it on men and women rather than machinery, and that's a better investment anyway. What was your thoughts on that? Is that realistic? Is automation, like especially in the port context, happening no matter what Trump says, or is there a way to that it's more complicated?
So I think that I hope it does happen because, introducing automation in ports, what it would do is lower the cost of importation, and that would just lower the cost of everything for, millions of people. So as with so many things, automation is going to harm a very small group of people, longshoremen, but it's going to benefit millions and millions of people through cheaper prices. Now, what I hope Donald Trump does is he says, let's have the automation, but let's compensate this very small group of people who are harmed by it. Let's compensate them. That way we can have our cake and eat it too.
So, but I just want to ask you this quickly then, in that regard then, with so much, if there is more focus and more corporate tax cuts that benefit innovators, what does that do for the wealth divide? Does that actually help, the poorest Americans, the ones who want to come up, who voted for Trump, does that actually help them in terms of economic upward mobility?
So the kind of the glory days of US growth, the 1950s, 1960s, times in which innovation had been very high, growth was very fast. Those were also times in which inequality was falling pretty quickly. And that's because truly, once technology gets into the economy, raises labor productivity, it raises wages for everyone. So right now we're stuck in a world in which growth has slowed and inequality has increased a lot. For starters, I think that increasing growth so that at least all the boats truly are rising would be fantastic. But I also think that once we get growth and labor productivity going, we'd also see faster increases in wages across the entire income distribution, not just at the very top.
We are out of time, but we do appreciate you taking the time to join us. Yoseba Martinez from the London Business School. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Yoseba.
Thanks, guys. It was great.
That does it for this episode of Capital Gains. A big thank you to Yoseba Martinez for joining us. And of course, my co-stars, Ben and Rick as well. Be sure to catch Capital Gains anywhere you find the finest of podcasts. Be sure to like and subscribe. From all of us here at the Capital Gains team, have a wonderful holiday and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.